Hi, welcome to our next edition of 8 Minutes with Steph. Today we're going to do a different format and we're going to ask Steph some questions that you've sent in. So the first question that we're going to ask is, Steph, what's one of the best tools that you pull out of your Agile coaching toolkit, and is that a winner?
Oh, such a good question. Well, there's actually so many that you can choose from. But I would say the one that is a winner and is always a winner is the art of appreciation. Maybe we'll go to the whiteboard. Go to the whiteboard with me. So appreciation actually it's a verb. So it's a doing. It's something that you do. Now, for those of you who don't know, you probably do know, I was brought up in a bit of a military family. And I first learned the art of active appreciation from my dad. And so what happens in the Australian Army with the way that they do their command and directives is that you'll have a general's intent that comes out. And that intent basically says, look, go take that hill. We need that hill for positioning. That gets translated down into, say, a platoon or a commander's tactical instructions. So if you think of it, an intent is very strategic. And then a command, so it could be a lieutenant colonel, or it could be down to a captain as well. But then what happens is that comes down to a squad. And by this time, you've got an instruction that's come through pretty much a few thousand people. Like a platoon is actually about 125 to 150, not too dissimilar to how we want our tribes to be. A squad, it would be half a dozen to a dozen, similar to how we set up our teams from that point of view.
Yep.
Now, in order to get an effective tactical response to that intention, what that squad will do is an appreciation. Now, for those of you who like movies, you've probably seen, say, the army coming up to a bunker. Cowboys and Indians used to do it. From that point of view, and you see them and they draw in the sand, what are we going to do? So our intention is to take the hill that's on, and we've got to take this bunker. And so what they do is an exercise, because these guys are on the ground. So they're the ones that have got what we call actual. So they have actual visibility of what's happening. So remember, you got strategic, you got tactical, and you got actual. Now, for those who know anything about the military, you would have heard of them talking to first actual, so front of base. So sergeant, first actual. And they're the people that are actually on the ground. And so what they do is they do this exercise called an appreciation. And they'll go, well, there's a front door, and then they'll say, so what? So what if we go in and there's kids? Or what if we go in and there's an IED? What if we come around here? And they go, so what? And they go through and they do that exercise until they've exhausted every single scenario. So essentially, the payoff that this exercise gets you a number of things. It gets you risk mitigation, because you've already worked through all possible scenarios, like verbally working through you. So the cost of a mistake in this situation is really quite high, but in a business, the payoff is fantastic. So if we build, say we merge our mobile products, and you go through the same thing. So what will happen in the market? So what would the marketing be? So how would the response be? So what would the pricing be? So what's the customer interaction be? And for those of you who know, it's probably sounding a bit like the 5 whys, but sometimes why can be judgmental. So going through and saying, well, so what? So what if we do that? What a difference is it going to make? What are you actually going to do? It's a very creative, collaborative way for the team that's actually on the ground. So again, this fits with us totally empowering the team to work out how we achieve that strategic outcome. And remember, the objectives are outcomes with key results. So that's the logical. So that's like I would say the left brain logical way of doing appreciation. The other side of doing appreciation is obviously the empathetic part. And so the empathy part is really, really quite awesome. And we often talk about, so empathy is having the ability to understand and to feel what someone else is feeling. And you know, the old saying, you don't know someone until you've walked 1,000 miles in their shoes. I can't wear high heels, so can't walk in Fiona's shoes right now. So nonetheless, so we do empathy exercise, and there's a wonderful exercise called empathy mapping. And empathy mapping, you may have come across it in HCD, so they use it for customer mapping. But there's a wonderful coach, Jean Tabaka. I don't know if any of you have heard of Jean Tabaka. Unfortunately, she passed away. She's part of Rally, and she started to introduce empathy mapping as an exercise for people to build appreciation for each other. So appreciation of how other people are doing, appreciation for their value and things like that. Now I've actually done this empathy mapping to help a GE, this is here at Telstra, so a GE appreciate what a group scrum master, or at the time was an Agile project manager, as well as what, ironically, one of our ops guys in the team. So we got the three of them in the team. And as you know, it's about what you think, what you feel, what you do. And this one, we had, I think it was around what we know, which was a bit different. So what do we know about the Agile scenario that we were doing? And then what we had, of course, was pains and gains. Now, for this exercise to build empathy amongst these three people, got them to start off. And the first thing that you do is you put the name and we put the role. So that's the first thing. One is just label it. The second thing is we got them to rotate it. And so you rotate it to the person to the left, and that person fills in everything that they think that, say, Fiona does in her, or what does Fiona think about as a chapter lead? What does she do? What does she actually know about the situation that we're focusing on? I think at that time we're having all these issues with, surprise, surprise, the cost of releases. And then what does she feel? What is she feeling with the issues that we're having about the high cost of releases? And then what are some of the pains and gains that this person in this role gets out of it? And so you do that and you rotate that around every person until it gets back in front of you. And you review what everyone thinks of you. And then what you do is you go, we talk about, you don't have to write it down, but you talk about, well, what surprised you? And what delighted you about what you guys said. And in that, there is a gap between what people think they know about someone else and then what is actually true. And so it's a method of building up a greater empathetic appreciation for someone else. And this has a very personal and professional impact on people in the workplace. So if you've got people struggling between, say, for example, a product owner, a scrum master, and then maybe a key stakeholder. So talk about, well, what's our role in sprint planning? What do you do? What do you think they do? And you'll find that there's probably some assumptions that you've made about other people that are really good to debunk.
Could you do that with two people, Steph?
Yeah.
Yep.
You could do it with two people, but if you're antsy pants with each other, sometimes it's nice to have a mediator or have a coach in the room. So appreciation, is my favourite tool. So logically, working out, we've got an outcome we've got to get to. We know tactically how we might do it, but what actually are we going to agree to do? And then appreciation from more of a human empathetic approach, an activity versus what you do, but in terms of who are you and how do we interact. And I would say out of that, I've saved millions of dollars like literally millions of dollars. Out of this, because our releases were costing $42 million a year, we were able to then do deep dive retrospectives with the multiple vendors, because the 3 of these guys realised they shouldn't be competing with each other. They just kind of misunderstood each other. From this stuff, in terms of a product point of view, or even if you're coming up what stories you want to do, it really helps you get down to most valuable, really quite important. And it helps you decision make about what's next best. And so that is probably the most important toolkit for me as a coach. And it's been a winner. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Steph. And just so you all know, I know it was more than 8 minutes, but Steph was going really well. So it's now 11 minutes with Steph. So thank you very much, Steph.
Thanks, bye.